Good. So Ashley was saying you had some notes or something because I was curious, like,
No, I just
does
meant
anyone have any points?
I have like 20, not bullet points that I need to go through, but just things that I wanted to mention, but they'll probably be mentioned by the end of the stream. So I'll go it's okay. We can this can be organic, natural. You take it away, Sam. I want to hear from you
Okay.
first.
Okay. So, Chris, just in case you weren't aware, Mackenzie did a whole 40-minute YouTube video going line by line, did a lot of research on the background, brought receipts. Like, I would suggest watching it. Because, and I think part of the reason why I wanted to have this live is because even though there were several times during Mackenzie's video where I was like, well, I might have a different take on that, it was still a really important point because I think that was a point that a lot of people have issues with, right? And so even if I would have a dissenting opinion, it's important, right? And so, I think I almost was like, can we just like pull up Mackenzie's video and then just go because it kind of covers everything. But I mean, since you have notes, do you think we could just like go through the notes and then see how it comes?
I I put them on my phone, but I'm on my phone right now, so I don't want to. I should have written them down normally.
Well, I feel like it could be really easy for us to get like into the weeds in one or two topics. And so I would love it if we could maybe say, is there one or two topics that you really feel like this needs to be discussed?
Yeah, wait, how did you put the little comment on there that says, was it spying?
There was like an effect that I could do, and I was told that that's a
Have you
really good
already
idea
talked
for
about
people who just join.
Have you already talked about that?
No, not at all. I just was
Let's
told
talk
that like
about
it's a good idea to put something.
Yeah. I just want to talk about definitions and redefining words because we call the Mormon church out for this all the time, right? Like they change the definition of words and it drives me effing crazy. I'll try not to swear. I don't want to get shut down. But okay, I
Oh,
am
just a second.
looking up the word spying and then I would like us to
Just a
discuss.
second.
So,
I noticed,
yeah.
Mackenzie, just really quick. I noticed Guava Alexis asked to be part of the discussion, and I do want to ask that you join in a little bit. But this is the four that we discussed, so I want to stick to the four for the first bit. But Guava, I definitely would love your opinion later on. So, sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. Yes. The more the merrier. Why is this website not working? Oh, I want thesaurus.com. I don't want thesaurus.com. I want dictionary.com. Just a second. Okay. So, definition of spying. No, not thesaurus.com. A person who keeps close and secret watch on the actions and words of another or others. To observe secretively or furtive. Wow, I don't know how that word sounds. Or furtively with hostile intent, often followed by on or on. Um, it's fine if you think what they did was okay. Well, obviously I disagree, but the definition of what they did is spying. Discuss.
I think you could say like the critical point is with malintent. But I like that you brought the definition in because I was actually curious about Ashley's LMFT training because in my training with LMFT we talked about like discussions of ethics and how sometimes one action may be really difficult to say whether it's ethical or not, and you kind of have to balance all of the things. And I was curious if you went through a similar training because I was almost wondering, should we discuss two separate issues? Because I think it would be important to figure out what is stopping people from moving on to the actual conversation of the queer community is hurting. And I think the things that are really getting people stuck is the idea of was it spying? And if it was or if it wasn't, was it justified? And I really think those are the 2 points that should be discussed. And I would even be okay for the sake of brevity to just even admit that it was spying so we could move on. But I'm curious if Chris has an opinion on the spying aspect of this. Because I know what Ashley and Mackenzie think.
episode. And so, can you hear me?
Okay, we
I
can hear you
think
again.
it was
You can hear me
now
again?
that's better. Yeah.
Okay, I tried to get clever with the setup here. Let me see what I can. I'm just going to hold it for now. So, I felt uncomfortable with the way they collected the information only because they looked uncomfortable. They sounded uncomfortable with how they collected the information. Like they were like sneaky and like we were sneaky and we were nefarious and we were, pushing the boundaries of journalism or whatever. And so that led me to believe that there was something going on that was inappropriate, but I have to admit that I don't actually know. Maybe you could give me some information about from what I know, they just went to his sacrament meeting and observed whether he was taking the sacrament. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Prior to that, sorry, this is maybe a different topic. They did leak the address of his church building. That is something I don't feel like is being talked about enough because to me that is just as problematic as what I feel they did because even though churches, oh, it's an open invitation, anyone can go, Charlie was not out there giving the address to his ward to the world. So the fact that Mormon Stories did that and they have not apologized for that, they just blew over, they just kind of hope people forgot that they did it. I didn't find out that they did it until today. I have screenshots. They for sure did it. It's not whether or not they did. But why did I bring that up? I lost my train of thought. But yeah, so they did go to the ward, observe them. Before that, that's what they did. I just feel like that's also necessary context too. So
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that.
There is also context. There's context on the whole dynamic of the situation that you brought up in your video about like why is he calling it celibate, not yes, celibacy. Why did he say celibate, not celibate? He seems uncomfortable, yada, 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 right? I actually have a lot of context on that, which might actually lead into what Chris was noticing. But I'm curious, do you think, Mackenzie, now might be a good time to mention the audio that you had with both of the people who went to see? I think it would be a good time to mention it.
Kara, we could talk about Kara, yeah. Is that what
Well,
you
and
meant?
also, didn't you also talk with Gerardo yesterday?
I did. Sorry, I don't have like audio of that. I did. I had a phone call with him last night. Yes, I did.
Yeah, so you've talked with both of the people, and I think that should be addressed. What are your thoughts? What did you collect?
Obviously, I think they both had good intentions, but I think I have so many thoughts because they go back and forth between saying, oh, we were celebrating. We were so happy we saw them take the sacrament, to what he's doing is harming the community. What he's doing is wrong. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, which is it? And I said in my YouTube video, I said, it might be both. They might be conflicted. So Gerardo is a gay man. Cara Burrell is bisexual. So they might both have different feelings on that. Here's the thing, like I got to talk to Gerardo for a little bit. We were both very sleep deprived, so I don't want to speak for them. But to me, I'm very confused by the feedback they both gave of whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. But yeah, so because it's like you were going there to celebrate them, but also you think what's happening is so wrong. And it's like, okay, maybe both can be true. I don't know. It just feels like you need to pick which one you think it is, kind of.
I do think it's both. I think the problem is every time they said something in the episode, I connected with it on both ends. Because on one hand, I mean, unfortunately, conversion therapy is always going to be there as long as the church is homophobic. And so in a way, unfortunately, I know that conversion therapy does give people hope as a middle ground on their way out of the church. And I know that unfortunately, it is something that I needed and would have been too difficult for me to leave the church. And so although it's extremely harmful and I absolutely hate it and I don't want anyone to go to it, I also have to lean in and understand it serves a purpose as long as the church is harmful. So I do feel both ways. I celebrate it because I can cry and be like, I would have loved this. And at the same time, I'm extremely upset because he is forcing people into conversion therapy. When I looked up Goodreads and looked at the feedback on his book, there are people saying I went to North Star, an organization that's conversion therapy, and it gave me hope, just like his book, yada yada. So like he's in a very problematic space, and so there's a lot of anger about it.
Yes.
And I would have been him. I totally would have been him, right? And so there's this duality of I absolutely don't like him, and I totally can't judge him because I would have been him.
Okay. What do you think, Chris?
I read an article by him in the Deseret, I think it was the Deseret News, when his book came out. He approached Deseret Book and said, "Hey, I know this is going to be a difficult situation for you. I'm voluntarily withdrawing my book from your catalog, just to make the church feel more comfortable." I don't think, I don't think, forgive me for being a little ageist. I don't think that Charlie has the lived experience that a lot of us do, who need to see that representation, who need to see the visibility of someone who is queer, who is trying to make it work, and who the church is helping to do that. By removing his book from their catalog, I think he shut off a lot of us. I think he turned me off, just because he's apologizing for the church with after he wrote the book. I don't understand that. Anybody else know about that?
Yeah, and I read some of his description on why he did that, and what he said was problematic. He disparages a lot of gay couples, saying that it's frustrating because he says something that is true but also disparaging as he said it, because he acknowledged that, and I think a dynamic that needs to be understood is that in the queer community, if you are a male, or at least raised as a male and are a homosexual, there is a high propensity to have multiple partners. Not so much, or at least not as prevalent in the lesbian community. And I happen to know from having been with football players on BYU and in the BYU space and dating plenty of gay men at BYU who are students, they say one thing and do another. And that's what the church encourages them to do because that's what it benefits them to do. And Charlie Bird is sitting behind a significant amount of privilege, of being extremely wealthy, having a lot of clout, having a lot of favoritism. And so there's a lot of forces in his world to get him to perform a specific way, whereas there's a very strong chance that he's living in another way, which I kind of clued in from the conversation on the Mormon Stories podcast, from him being duplicitous and ghosting them.
That's what I'm having an issue with is Mormon Stories podcast since 2021 has accused Charlie of lying, of being a hypocrite, of leading a double life. They don't say he's doing this, they say if he's doing this, what if he's doing this, which in my opinion is still accusing someone of doing something. And from what I have gathered, I haven't listened to every single podcast. I've not read Charlie's book, okay? But from what I've researched, Charlie was never lying. He was very open to dating. He was very, like, anything they accused him of lying of never ended up being true. So I'm curious as to if you have any specific examples of Charlie lying. I have not found that yet. I have not found him to be dishonest even in one instance. So I would love to see that.
And see, that's the problem with why I think they did need to verify what was going on. Because if all you have is hearsay, then you don't know because you can't verify it. But I can tell you it is so significant that BYU students who are gay and date other men do lead a double life if they choose to stay. When I told my husband, oh, Charlie said that he was faithful and kept his celibacy until he was married, my husband immediately laughed and said, oh, so he lied. Because it is so significantly prevalent. Like the ability for this guy to actually be what he claims is rare. It happens. It really does. And I have met some of those people.
This
but
is
it's
just
extremely rare. And so that's my issue. It's like if this is the case, fine, but I'm seeing a lot of things that make me call foul.
But where is your evidence of that? Like, there's like something I said in my YouTube video was, are you also looking through his bedroom window? Is that where your intel is coming from? Because to accuse him of lying about waiting till marriage, he has a whole Instagram post about how he waited till marriage, and it's so cute. So basically, you're allowed to, but basically, you're just saying you don't believe him, but you don't have any proof or evidence. It's just your feelings. Am I wrong?
It's my experience with the community. And
Okay.
that was kind of my issue, is that I feel like there are discussions that are being had without experience of the community to know why those assumptions need to be made. It's just unheard of.
Ashley, did you have
And that's why I'm like, if this is true,
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
can it be true?
yeah. I think that's slightly the problem I see though is like making such generalized sweeping assumptions can not be great. Like it's just so hard because sometimes they can be true, but sometimes they're not true, and it's not fair to jump to those generalized assumptions all the time. But I mean, it's like um if I think about like I don't know, even like some of the stereotypes that people throw at like bisexual people or pansexual people, like those don't apply to me at all. But like people could assume they do, and that would be really hurtful of me to like if they thought that of me. So that's why it's hard for me to do that same thing too. And obviously I'm not a gay man, so I can't speak to that experience. But I know there are lots of big sweeping stereotypes with LGBTQ community that I think are not good.
Agreed. And some of them are not really deserved. I think the point that I'm trying to make is, because it is going off left field, is that there are valid reasons why people would be having this reaction because of our experience with the community. And so when people like myself are like, I call BS, is it true that yes, we need to suspend our disbelief and give him the benefit of the doubt? Yeah, absolutely. And it's also true that because of my deep experience with gymnasts who were at BYU, because I took those courses, BYU football players, because I've been with those men, right? Like all of these intersectionalities that Charlie Bird has been part of, I've been part of, and I call BS. But I'm suspending judgment, and I understand when people don't believe him. And that's what I'm trying to highlight is I think you could say, just like how you said that spying is malintent, I think you're hearing that there's this duality. We would love for it to be true. And even if it is true, he's encouraging conversion therapy, and it's clearly happening through his following. And so it's, while we're happy for him, we envy him, and we're mad at him, and we're happy for him, we have all of these feelings all at once. It's still wrong, right? And so I could easily concede maybe it was spying, because I don't think that's the important part. I think the important part is, was it justified? And because of all of these things that I'm bringing up and the harm that it's causing to my community, I think that's the key, which is it's justified. And that's my perspective.
I Gosh, I'm reluctant to weigh in because I don't feel like I have all the facts. But oh, the sound, is that bad? Better? I I mean, he's wow. The definition of spying. Okay, I'm absorbing that, and I'm also absorbing. He wasn't hiding. He's writing articles about it. He's posting it on Instagram. Has he ever said that he was or was not taking the sacrament? Sounds to me like he has been saying that he's in full fellowship in the church.
I think though Mackenzie made an excellent point, which is why I'm happy to concede that it would be spying. Because even if it wasn't spying, I think it deserves attention. That even if you're a celebrity, does that negate your ability to have a private life in what you consider a sacred space? I think that's a valid point. I really do. And that's
That
a
was
point that
hard.
Mackenzie brought up. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, good point. Good point.
So I am experiencing, because I'm an a new author, I'm experiencing some level of celebrity, which makes me very uncomfortable. And people do look at me differently. They don't see me. They see my persona, they see my image. And I would be okay. I would be disturbed if somebody followed me into a place of worship and recorded what I was doing.
There's so much to balance because, like, are we also going to get mad at new name Noah for taking a secret recording of the temple? Here we are applauding that, but we're not applauding the spying of this couple, right? It's so nuanced, and I think what's important is that all of our feelings get hurt because I don't know about you, but I think all of us are approaching this from a different level of trauma and a different space from the church. And we're all getting triggered because I don't know about you, and maybe I'm making assumptions, but I could imagine having been socialized as a female in the church and having the male gaze, having the priesthood tell you what to do, you might feel some sort of way about people spying on you in your church, right?
Yeah, I want to talk about
And
the
that
temple.
could be coming up.
So I think the temple thing is a good point because I thought about that because it's like those videos were taken without those people's consent. Absolutely. I never thought about it that way. The difference is whether you agree with temple videos or not. The differences are their faces were blurred, names were not revealed. As far as I'm aware, it was just look what is happening, but it wasn't this is who's doing it. Mackenzie Vance is in the temple. She's at this temple. The temple is this address. To me, it's quite different, but there was a lack of consent with the temple videos also. And yeah, I think it's all about consent. I don't remember where else I was going with that, but yeah, temple videos. I've been thinking about that.
I think the temple videos needed to be exposed. I'll just be honest with that. And it gave me a great deal of gratification and a great deal of look, everybody can see what's going on here. And we're not keeping secrets for old white men anymore. Charlie is not hiding. So I don't think it's exactly the same characteristic, but the church is still hiding their temple rituals.
Yes.
Can I say one thing? This is like related to what we're saying, so I don't want to get too off track, but I just want to say, like, Sam, to your point, that is something that, I mean, if you know me at all, you know I am not a big fan of John Dehlin. I never have been. But like the angle that you're coming from, Sam, with like the worry about conversion therapy seems so much more legitimate and valid to me than any crock of shit that has come out of John's mouth. Like, sorry. You know, like it's all pettiness. He wants to be in the know. He wants to be the head of the Exmos and like, oh yeah, I support Gerardo going and spying. It's not because he has any fucking any flipping worries. Let me put my Mormon filter on.
This is over 18. I think you're allowed a few times.
Okay, well, one strike. He's not flipping worried about the queer community. He's not worried about conversion therapy. He's worried about getting fucking clout. And that's what pisses me off. So it's like, to hear you explain that element, I'm like, okay, that does bring another like lens and layer to it for me that I really appreciate. John Dehlin doesn't give a flying rat's ass about that. And that's one of my biggest issues.
See, and I have to say, like, one of the reasons why I've been a huge fan of Ashley is because Ashley is the first person who alerted me to some of the problematic things that exist with Mormon Stories podcast. Because there was a thing, I don't remember exactly what the episode was, but something was said, and Ashley was calling out that it was racist. Mm-hmm. And when I watched it, I was like, was it? And then she said something in the post, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so used to excusing this that I never let it hit me, right? And then, oh my gosh, so many feelings came up because I've normalized and just gotten so used to some things, right? And so this was the first time when I realized, okay, there could be problematic things going on. And so I've been trying to balance, like, okay, problematic elements, and also try to put myself in the idea of like, if I was Gerardo, because let's be honest, Latino conversion therapy survivor married to a guy, okay, in many ways I am, right? Like, and so I hear from grapevine, hey, this is happening, having similar experiences of being like, are you kidding me? Girl's ghosting us. I can't approach him. He's not talking to me. I've already caught him in some lies. I'm going to be called a liar already. What do I have to do to prove myself? And I did actually want to bring up a point because you asked about it, Mackenzie, in your post, and I just wanted to share. It's really frustrating post Mormonism as a gay male to even know if you're still a virgin. Because what even is it as a gay man to lose your virginity? Because everyone talks about P and V, right? That's what they always talk about. We don't have that. And so is it when you're with your boyfriend for the first time and you're hugging without stuff, right? Like, or is it when a certain fluid is released? Who knows? When do you get to lose, air quotes, your virginity? And it's confusing, especially when if you're a Latter-day Saint, officially by the rule book, even kissing would be now breaking the law of chastity. So is holding his hand breaking the law of chastity as a gay male? It's so confusing to know what that even means for you. And so then when they asked Gerardo, well, why could you say that he's not, that he's breaking the law of chastity? I saw a million things go in his mind that were going in my mind too, of like, how do I catch you up with what it's like to be us? Because there's so many experiences and confusions and moments when you're like, what does this mean about me and my relationships? Just so much going on. So that would be my response to that.
I want to speak to that because Gerardo clarified that for me. He said, you pulled those clips of me talking about the word celibate. He goes, I don't even remember, first of all, saying half of that. And he goes, also, here's the reason I did that, because of conversion therapy. He said, because they pound it into your head that celibacy is what you said, not holding hands, not feeling romantic feelings. And I was like, I've never thought of that they literally kind of distorted that word. When most people think sex, that's not what they told you, because they said it's just being attracted to someone else, then you're not celibate. And it's like, okay. But so yes, I think that's trauma. It's ingrained in him. But John Dehlin clarified. He was like, this is what the word celibate means. And he goes, oh, okay, well, this is why I said that. But then he later goes to interchange those words. So maybe, here's the thing. I think it's a learning, I don't know. I think you do need to be cognizant of that word but also I was not cognizant, I was not aware of why he kept using it that way. And it hurt my heart. Of course it hurt my heart. Like, Gerardo's not a bad guy. He's a sweetheart, but I just like, I don't know. I have so many mixed feelings. Sorry. I'm going off on a tangent. Anyway, so I wanted to confirm that I learned something new last night. Anyways, so.
What else are we feeling? What else are we thinking? Because I feel like I've been dominating the conversation, and I brought all of you on because I deeply value your perspectives. I'm just outspoken. Sorry.
I don't know. Like you said, it's funny because you said in your TikTok, you're like, we're probably going to disagree about a lot. I think we're going to agree a lot more than you think. And that's what I commented. Like, I really think we have more in common than we don't. It's the tone. It's just like you are coming at this from, I'm open to being wrong and being respectful. And the people that are pissing me off right now are the people who are not open to being wrong and are just so like, I just don't appreciate the way that Mormon Stories podcast, John Dehlin and Gerardo have gone about this whole thing. And even in their apology, I have a problem with it. But it's not my apology to accept. Okay? I'm not here to deem whether it was right or not. If people accept it, that is awesome. Some people still think he had no need to apologize. So that's a whole nother thing. But I don't know. Anyway, sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts. Guav, hello.
Hi,
What do you want to go by Guav or what do you want to go by?
I go by Alexis.
Alexis, how are you? Oh,
She gonna be paused.
That's been said. But I think that kind of a lot of what Sam was saying, where like within the context of queer Utah, queer BYU students thinks are going to mean a lot different than to straight members of the church completely. Like, I know people that went to love court for holding hands or even just telling their bishop that they were, quote, same-sex attracted, because that's breaking the law of chastity. Because even lusting upon somebody else is already breaking it. So they're already committed adultery in their heart. And, like, and there's so much mental gymnastics within Mormonism that even more so when you're queer, like, I also knew people, like, so I'm bi, and growing up, I remember hearing, like, if you lost after, a woman, you already committed, adultery in their heart. And they were so specific that every time it's gendered, it's specific. It doesn't mean everyone. So it was a caveat of, oh, so if I lost after a guy, it's not adultery in your heart, right? Like, it sounds so stupid, but all of chastity and purity culture is stupid anyway. And so I think that kind of what he was saying, that that it really is very different. Like, the amount of bishops that are on Grinder, like, it's a running joke around Utah County. Like, it really is. Like, and so I don't blame what Sam was saying about, like, I don't know where that's coming from. That said, I know a lot of us who were so scrupulous with trying to follow everything, where I do know people who um are in their like 40s, 50s, and they're like, I've never even touched myself or anything because I would rather die than break the law of chastity. And I see it a lot with women who were like, well, I'm not going to marry a man, but I'm queer, and so I'll just get one in the next life, I guess. And I know some men too, and it's just kind of like, they're wherever they're in their faith crisis, and they're like, I just gotta hold on till the end, whatever, and they want to make it work. And so I kind of talked before with Sam, I do think there's this duality of, like, in the whole conversation, I think there's a duality of, like, it's not Charlie versus Monmouth stories. I think they both provide harm in what was going on, and they both have some good points into what's going on. I don't think it's an either or. I think that also the platform is for profit, and so it gets extra yucky when you start speculating on other people, and there's other conversations to be had there than if it's, someone in your own word. And I also think that Charlie's very problematic, and like, he reminds me of, he's basically the Blair White or Caitlyn Jenner to Mormonism. Like, literally, quite literally using that same profile to boost, like, conservatives in Utah that are literally making me have to, like, run away from the state and the house that my wife and I have and get whatever jobs in another state where we can, because whether it's their racist policies or their, like, homophobic or transphobic policies, like, we can't just get a job wherever we want in the US. We have to make sure that it's, like, safe within those three, or at least have, like, some protections. And to see queer community members that are getting graced by the church that are okay to be married, because his whole point, whether, like, if he was a virgin or not, is mute. He's married and he's active and he can go to church and he's invited. So that's not something that's given to anybody else. Like, you literally could be a rapist in the church and not even have a love court or anything, as we know. It's not even in the agenda. But just even socially transitioning, like, the amount of kids who just even, as kids, just socially transition in their homes or at school and are having problems within the church, and there's, like, written that they're supposed to, like, be reprimanded and stuff like that. Like, it's causing lots of harm. And so, like, was it spying? I think so. Was it gross? I think so. Putting it and speculating on it for profit, yeah, that's really weird. Also, him making profit in his book, in his social media, making it his career to be a pygmy for the church when the last one left and said, actually, no, I almost died because of this. And then, like, David Archuleta, he's talked about it. He had apostles tell him, and he was like, they were literally telling me it was better to die than to stay active. And he just seemed to like marry someone. So I think that because that didn't work out, I think they were kind of like, okay, well, but as long as you do it this way. And I saw a video actually from a non-Mormon, nothing to do with this, ex-evangelical talking about how, to survive, most churches right now are not going to be Westboro Baptist homophobic in the door, but they just won't tell you that you have a different level of fellowship. And he was talking about a lesbian couple that was in his congregation, and he was closeted and still in it. And they were the best people that were doing service, but there were notes on their file. Mormons do that too, where it's like, they can't be alone with anyone. They have to have other people here. They can't handle money. They can't do this, blah, blah, blah. And they had no idea till they were like 3 years in, when he like whistleblowed about it. And because they're not going to be open that they're homophobic. And he's like, I think what most Christian churches are going to do is like, we love everyone, have that kind of be the facade and not change any doctrines or any policies and just kind of be like, well, look at them, blah, blah, blah. And I think, I mean, that's how it works with race within the church. Like, you don't really have substantial change. The doctrine's still racist as fuck. So it's a lot of it. But it's always just, well, but look and so, he's a member and he's up here. And like literally it happened in Real Housewives of Salt Lake, the last reunion. They asked Lisa Barlow specifically about how she could be an LGBT activist and be part of a church that harms queer people.
I
And
know
she
who
was
you're
just
talking
like,
about. I love Real Housewives.
yeah,
Continue.
yeah, right. And she was just kind of like, oh, I love everyone. And then there was the same question about race. And she's like, oh, well, so-and-so's a member of the church. And I feel that that works with the Mormon 2.0 sort of people. And Charlie's kind of in that, in their own little world. But it's not going to really resonate with people that were like crying since they were children or pre-baptism to like be taken so they can still, be sealed to their families because they have a crush on like someone at school, which sadly is a very common experience. Like 7-year-olds, thinking about that. And like, so yeah, I think what Charlie's doing is dangerous. And I think a lot of that speculation, the way they went about it was not great towards, a public podcast. And anyway,
That's the point.
I just
I want to be mindful. Chris, how are you doing on time? Because I know you're in the East Coast.
Yeah, I got about 15 minutes left, and then I'm going to crash.
Okay. I really want to. Is there anything that you especially wanted to get across? Because I think I'll be honest, one of my favorite part of Mackenzie's YouTube video was when she's like, after watching all of this, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Because you just feel so like gaslit. And I was like, yes, Mackenzie. But like, I felt the same way, but I have to say, because of this whole situation and because of your voices here on this panel, I've had to ask myself some really uncomfortable questions. And I think I've had some growth. And I would love to open the floor to Chris because you only have 15 minutes. Is there anything that you still want to discuss or anything that you feel like you did learn that you would like to share? Because you don't have much time left.
Thank you. I appreciate that. There's two things, actually. The first thing is that one of my favorite things about leaving the church was that I didn't have to make sense of the doctrine and the policies anymore, and the behavior and the culture and everything. It just doesn't make sense. And so that was quite a relief to me. So I don't like to get in the weeds on that. But I will say a couple of people have made comments about David Archuleta. and how he was a golden boy, but he did not, either he didn't get extended the same invitation or he didn't want to participate in that. I'm not sure what it was. But my heart goes out to David, and he just bore his soul on social media and said, "Look, I'd rather he's like, I can't live like this." And I feel that so strongly. Like it just ties us in knots and it makes us want to give up because there is no way to make that work. And so to watch the Charlie situation, I'm so frustrated and I'm hurt because this is a special dispensation and I don't agree that it's equitable. I don't believe that it's going to be healing for any of us without the church making some kind of apology or statement about what the heck they're doing.
Thank you.
Very good points.
What about I was just gonna ask
What
if
were you
anyone
saying?
else has thoughts or
Well, I was just saying, people are like, "Oh, we should be mad at the church, not Charlie," and I feel like that's what I've been trying to say this whole time is, and you can have opinions about Charlie, that's fine, but he's just doing what his leaders are telling him to do, and you can have opinions about whether he's indoctrinated or whatnot. And from listening to his podcast, he has a very strong testimony. He's very much right now in this current moment in time is in the church. So what's happening is, yeah, his bishop and his stake president are like approving this, but like there's bishops. What am I trying to say? Okay, the apostles are divided. Sorry, something I wanted to bring up was John DeLynn said this. He said the apostles are divided and they literally make calls and like say, hey, don't excommunicate this person, which is bullshit. We know the church is bullshit. Like, as people who have left the church, we know it's made up. We know it's just a bunch of men with their opinions and their homophobia and their transphobia. So it's like, to me, I feel like so much fire is put on Charlie and not the church. And I agree with the comment saying we should be talking about the church and their double standards. The reason Charlie was brought up was because Mormon stories made him the, like, I don't know, the centerpiece of their story. Like, they could talk about this without making Charlie the sacrificial lamb. I don't know what else to call it. They could still talk about this, but they didn't have Charlie's consent. Charlie's always been so uncomfortable with Mormon Stories podcast, like they've just kept being so insistent on it. So it's just, I don't know. I just think they need to leave the poor boy alone. Obviously, now I think they will, but like, they literally just need to leave him alone. You can still talk about the issues without everything they did. Like, I don't know. I just said a lot of things right there.
I think that Sam, and I think it was maybe his first video, pointed out, like, this isn't new. There's always different golden boys that the church has used that at some sort of level. I mean, one was one of the apostles' brother. I forget right now his name. I know that there's a first counselor in San Francisco and someone here and somewhere there, whatever. Like, they're there, but like you're saying, the church does not match what it says and what it does. And that one exception isn't going to mean that anybody else is able to do that. And I think in return, it makes it seem like it adds to the scrupulosity of people of, like, if you were more faithful, like so and so, then you wouldn't be struggling like this and into that
it's
perfectionism.
the opposite though.
And sadly,
It's the opposite though. The honest get punished. Chris has a thought, and I want to give Chris the
Yeah.
floor really quick. She has to go.
First of all, I feel like Charlie Bird has the church's hand up his ass and that he is an acting puppet. I will just say he is a puppet. He is saying exactly what they want him to say, and he is getting the privilege because he's being obedient in that way. He says that his blessings come because of his faithfulness, his strong faith. Okay, so let me just tell a quick story. My child, when they were 15, came out to me as non-binary. And that is what precipitated that was the catalyst for my leaving the church and taking my kid with me. Even though I had been a closeted lesbian my whole life. The bishop met with us a few times before we left, and he told my kiddo to go home and pray. Pray to see if God was on his side about this journey into no gender or fluid gender or whatever, gender queer. And my kiddo, we all went home and we all prayed individually. And then we came back to the bishop's office and the bishop said, "So what did God tell you?" And my kid said, "I feel like God is on my side. I feel like Heavenly Father is okay with me, and I feel proud of who I am." And the bishop said, "It is not compatible. You didn't get the right answer." And I said, I jumped in. I was like, "Wait a minute. When you told him to go home and pray, you said what you meant was go home and get the answer that I gave you." So here's my point. Charlie's faith is not stronger than my kid's faith or any of our faiths. Like, we have dedication to the church. We've spent our whole lives on this. We've served missions, we've served in callings, we've sacrificed money for this church. And we wanted to figure out initially how to stay in it. And it's just not compatible, and it's not a matter of faith.
I do have a question for Lexus later, that I really want to get to about allyship, but I want to address the idea of token pick-me's, to pose a question, because it's true, the church keeps using different people, right? And I've had a guy in my mind. I wonder if any of you are familiar with Josh Weed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's a reason. So here's the thing. When Josh Weed was in a mixed orientation marriage, Josh Weed was upfront from the very beginning. He was a licensed marriage and family therapist who married his best friend. She was also a licensed marriage and family therapist. They were open about how this works for them, but please don't use us as an example. Just like how you called out, Mackenzie, that Charlie is saying this is for me, right? And so after listening to you, Mackenzie, and seeing the timeline, because you brought the receipts, I was able to, unfortunately, dislike him less, right? And then I started seeing more of Josh Weed. And I realized this is exactly who I would have been, but he's trying to be honest and say, this is just me. And I want to hold the duality of it's okay to be following your own path. And then unfortunately, the church uses you as the pick me, the example, the token person who's living the way they want to. And then you have your own falling out because it's too much pressure. You can't do it. And it never was going to work. You just happen to be in the public face. And as soon as Josh Weed left his wife, he happened to get in a relationship with one of my really good friends. And that friend reached out to me and said, I'm coming to you first because I'm not so sure other people are going to accept this. And he told me I'm in a relationship with Josh Weed. And I was okay with that because I understand what it's like to be in conversion therapy. I understand what it's like to be coerced and do everything you have to do because you think you have to.
And they
Right? And
completed
so
all
the
of
more I'm hearing,
I was just saying, and as soon as he got divorced, the church yeeted all of the videos and articles that they previously had about how great of an example they were. That's why
exactly. And
back.
so for
Sorry.
me, I am seeing someone who is a future Josh Weed, someone who is currently doing his best, but currently doing harm. And that harm does deserve to be raked through the coals. And I am fine if he gets everything that's coming to him because that's what needs to happen. And when he comes out of the church and recognizes it, he will have all of my love and support. But right now, I cannot have the energy for people who want to have their cake and eat it too. And so I think
Yeah.
that's the other duality of thank you, Mackenzie, for humanizing him for me. I still don't like him and I don't want anything to do with him. But as soon as he leaves, I think he's just another Josh Wade, a guy who just is doing his best and is being coerced.
And I will say that there's also a difference because Josh was like, this was personal, we made the decision, whatever. But the way that it's being used right now is there's another way. You don't have to leave. You can have both. And he is and was a public figure before, and he's utilizing it for conversion therapy. If it was just someone that you know next door, it'd be a lot different. And yes, I agree with Mackenzie that like the church should have the heat, but I think he also is okay to receive criticism within the things he chooses to lift his platform for, which is a lot of Republican talking issues and conservative ones and church ones that cause harm to the rest of the community. Um, and I also guarantee that if he did have a dating profile, it would have said, no blacks, no Asians, no Latinos,
Yes.
no femmes, LDS only.
That's the thing that I was also curious about because I immediately had an opinion against Charlie because of the problem that we have in the community with cis hetero presenting white privileged men who are gay. And I don't know if you're aware of that, but it's a huge issue because the only tiny little margin of yeah, or and they're often like Trump supporters too, right? Like the only type of marginalization they have is that in their secret life they're gay, right? But everything else is working for them and they are extremely problematic. And knowing how much privilege Charlie comes from, I immediately just said no, 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 no. But Mackenzie makes good points. He still is a human being, which I guess I should give some grace to. If I have to.
I can give grace to him as a person that deserves respect, but not his opinions, and they are okay to be questioned.
So, Everyday Valkyrie brought up a really good point. I want to read their comment. They said, but Charlie doesn't say it's just him. He said he wants to show that queer members have options besides being alone or in a mixed orientation marriage. And I want to bring that up because I heard him say this on the podcast. He goes, there are options. There's only options for certain people. Not everyone has the same options that he does. It depends on your privilege. Like you said, he's white, and unfortunately, I don't know if he recognizes that. I don't know. I don't know him. I don't know what his thoughts
He
are on that.
responded to comments basically saying you need to have faith when people have brought it up.
Yeah.
Like if you're righteous.
Been problematic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't.
I guess-
Oh, go ahead. No, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I guess just I wanted to then lean into to what you helped me see and the uncomfortable questions I've had to ask myself. Because as you helped me humanize Charlie, you've helped me. So I recently just had a podcast, was on a live like a day or two ago, where I was arguing on behalf of conversion therapy survivors who kept their faith. They are Christians and they're gay and they exist. Right? And I was arguing with Christians who said that you can't be gay and Christian. You can. And here I was arguing for their right to exist. And then here's this Mormon who's gay. And I'm like, no, you can't, never can exist. F Charlie, I hate him. You know, and then I'm like, oh crap. And now I am having to lean into something that Valkyrie told me today. Let's be honest, this is a battle for keeping people alive. And it sucks that we have to make this choice. But I think it's better to have people remain in the church and stay alive than not. And if that's the price we have to pay, then I think, unfortunately, I need to validate that while I strongly disagree, I probably need to make some room and say that you can still be Mormon and gay, although I strongly disagree with that being a healthy choice. And that is the uncomfortable thing that I've had to learn from this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just making the point too, in the comments that Charlie, I'm going to say it again. He's from a different generation. His generation is the same generation that my kids are in, and everything is much more accepting and fluid, and let's have a conversation, and that is not what Sam and I have experienced. That is not the welcoming atmosphere. We've been hated and we've been forced to hate ourselves and to try to conform to a standard that is impossible. And I spent 25 years in a mixed orientation marriage, and it was my only option. I did not have any other option. There was one track, and I needed to get on it, and I needed to get on it fast. So I just can't help but feel like he does not understand our plight. Like, I know he's a member of the community, but he hasn't faced what we faced.
But maybe no, he hasn't. But maybe he knows that. And I don't know what he's thinking. I haven't listened to.
I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest.
About what?
Tell me.
Like, I don't think it's as I think Charlie and I are closer in age, but I still think like it hasn't been like butterflies and rainbows and he just doesn't know any better. I think that it's just a lot of his privilege.
Well, I was gonna say, I think
And there's a lot of
yeah, I think he thinks he's helping people in the long run. Like, I think he might know he's privileged, and he thinks, well, I'm doing this to champion for other people. Like, he's also an advocate, And I think, like, I don't, do you know what I mean? I think he knows that this is just the beginning, and he knows that his situation is unique. I've just been thinking about it while we're talking. Like, he's not dumb. He knows that he's in a very unique situation. I think he thinks he's just kind of like championing he's helping other people.
I think he thinks he's a pioneer, but at the same time, and I hate to bring politics into this, but from his talking points and everything he talks about, he's not one for intersectionality in like any way, shape, or form, or within the community. So we can't like assume that he is when his words and actions don't match up to them. And so I think that I can't say he's really advocating for anything but himself or really cares because he hasn't.
Okay.
His words are there, though. I have read that he does say that. Mackenzie, you keep shutting your mouth. I want to hear your sass. I have not heard your sass all live at all. I'm just really disappointed by the lack of sass.
Because this is a serious conversation. I'm sassy when I'm talking to myself to a camera. I'm not gonna try and be a smart ass when we're trying to actually have a come to Jesus family meeting. I really want to like listen. And my sass has run out. Also, I'm so sleep deprived. I can't think of anything funny to say. Also, I want to hear you guys. I don't want to. Okay, actually, I want to say something to you, Sam, because you said something to the effect of "let the queer people duke this out," and that hurt my feelings because no, I'm not queer. I'm the only not queer person in this conversation right now. But like, I can still have an opinion. I want to support. So it felt like, I don't know if that was your intention. It felt like you were telling me to shut up and let you guys figure it out, but that I need to stop talking. And I was like, but I this is my opinion. I want to
That's
help.
something that
This is my
Alexis
opinion.
brought up. That's what Alexis brought up, and I did want to discuss that. I can say where I'm coming from, but I would love Alexis to respond to that so that we could hear, like, because clearly there was an impact on Mackenzie. Where were you coming from, Alexis?
Where I'm coming from is I and I have to say, Mackenzie, I loved your video. I thought it was well out. And unlike either side of the people in the conversation we're originally talking from, whether it's Charlie or the podcast, you have a history and in your videos were mindful and coming from a place of intersectionality and kind of putting your own sense. At least that's kind of how I felt it. So it felt like you're adding to the conversation your opinions while also deferring to the people in the community to kind of bring up and like, what do you think? That is completely different than people that claim allyship without deferring, without listening, without doing research, and thinking of it just from whatever their perspective is in period. And kind of what I brought up earlier about Sam was just there's nuances that maybe somebody else doesn't even think about. Not that you're not like in the convo, but that it shouldn't but that maybe people don't think about. And I actually told Sam in one of his videos too, because he kept saying like, "Oh hey, I keep seeing allies XYZ or disagree with that," and I was just kind of like, "Hey, let's not dismiss other queer people that aren't agreeing with John Dehlin either, because it's not just allies that like happen to not know what they're talking about. It's just there's myriads of opinion within everybody, and it's a mixed bag. It's not white or black." So that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better.
I've had Ashley, did you have oh, you're turning off your camera. I wonder, Ashley, from your experience and your thought, because this is something you do well, I think. Do you have thoughts on that idea of like where to hold space, what's your lane, and how to hold allyship, uplift voices?
How to hold allyship? What? Sorry, it glitched.
Oh, sorry, I was just trying to say words as a way to get you to talk, because I thought you would have a good opinion on it.
Allyship. But I didn't hear the rest of the question. I'm so sorry.
Sure. I guess I would love to hold two things true, right? I did value Mackenzie's video, but it wasn't the first one that I saw from someone who isn't in the community. The very first time I heard about this was the first time that I heard about this was a straight ally who was propping up Latter-day Les, saying, this is wrong, I don't like this, yada yada. And I was really, to be honest, kind of grateful, but also offended, because I felt like she was interjecting opinions that may not necessarily reflect the entire community's nuance and thoughts on the subject. And I thought she was speaking for us rather than propping up our voices, even though she was propping up a voice. And I felt that way because I thought it was disingenuous for Latter-day Les to bring out the 1970s example of surveillance of gay men to an example where here's someone who's already out living something very public and then trying to connect the two. I've later discovered that she is a Latter-day Saint. Sorry, they are a Latter-day Saint. Yeah, that's their pronouns. That they're a Latter-day Saint, and that they've been saying for a long time, we need to just leave Charlie alone. And so it makes sense that that's where they'd be coming from. But I got vibes of like, okay, can we like stay in our lane though? Because I've seen plenty of times where Black people in Black spaces will say things and then people will come into their spaces as if their opinion matters without context of the culture, right? And I'm hearing opinions that don't have context of the lived experience of the culture. And that's where I felt erased. And I wished allies would listen more and not try to speak in places that they don't have. And I really appreciated that we've all felt hurt by this, like literally every single one of us, right? And I think that matters. And I would like to know more about that. And that's where I think allies come in. And I don't know what that looks like and where it stops and where it starts. But that's where I was coming from, because I have seen people be in spaces where they shouldn't.
No, that makes sense. And to be honest, I feel like John Dehlin does that a lot too. I think he kind of preps people just throughout, his tenure history and stuff like that. I had a big kind of falling out with Lindsay Hansen Park long time ago, because it felt like for Sunstone, it was just kind of like, oh hey, we've got criticism. There's no people of color. I think you're a person of color right now. Like, here we go. And then people would go, and then it'd be like empty and like nothing else. And when there would be actual conversations around 2016, and talked about hate crimes and like white supremacists or whatever, it became like basically not all white supremacists, like they are rural or like whatever. And I was just like, okay, now, like, I know we have history, but block. Later on TikTok, she found one of my comments and she was like, oh, did I do that? And actually apologized and stuff. And like, it was a lot better. But still, there's, that's, very prevalent within a lot of things within the community. And I definitely understanding that. So I'm definitely seeing now where you're coming from. Especially like if those are like most of the videos that are popping up. With the surveillance thing, I don't know. I immediately definitely thought about Oaks's like Oaks's conversion therapy and like having people do the shock therapy at BYU and buy their own porn or whatever. But also even when I was at BYU, there were people on dating apps that were part of the honor code that were just like narking on people. And, same thing in like wards and ward councils. And so a lot of times, like, it's not like boo allies, but it's if you don't already understand and know a lot of the things, you might not get what we're saying in shorthand without like putting back or like going back, or things get lost in translation because of the missed cultural context. So I don't think it's like a personal thing. I just think sometimes there's times and spaces, again, where, like you said, there's a difference with propping up voices and that interjection. But I do think that hypervigilance in general is completely different. Like, it's obviously prevalent within Mormonism. That's why garments are garments. They say they're internal or whatever. But it's really, garment checks. Everybody knows that it's worse for women, how it goes, blah, blah, blah. That said, being queer and hypervigilance, like, it's dangerous in a different aesthetic. Like, purity culture is already dangerous, but trying to just even date at church schools puts people in very dangerous positions because that secrecy is more important than like safety or like learning how to like normally date. So instead of just going out and getting a coffee or hot cocoa somewhere where people might see that you're talking and just having a innocent conversation, a lot of times people feel pushed like their only option is to go up the canyon and meet a stranger like deep in the woods behind a trash can and like hope you don't get murdered because of the hypervigilance. So I do think that that was for a lot of people kind of very touchy, and because just the whole thing with the sacrament specifically, it's also a way to publicly shame people. Like, not taking the sacrament is already a way to shame people, like in a public space. And so adding the someone is looking to see if you are or you're not already brings up a lot of that paranoia and hypervigilance again. And so I think everyone just kind of touched a lot of red hot buttons that were already sore and different life experiences. And so everyone's kind of just triggering everyone because the common denominator is the church is trauma.
Yes.
So I think we're all just kind of like, it's not like right or wrong way to feel because we all have those different life experiences, but we're all getting triggered by the trauma that comes within hypervigilance in the church, queer or not. And so people get defensive. Hey, this is my safe space. You shouldn't have been here. But then it's like, where does that go? If you're in your public forum saying homophobic things, but you're gay, are they still homophobic? If you are making money off of the oppression of other people, like, where does that go? I don't know.
You just hit the nail on the head that we're all triggered because I love what you said, because the church is trauma, and I love that you said that we all have trauma from the hypervigilance, even though the queer surveillance is much different than a straight person feeling that same thing. So I was triggered by the sacrament meeting thing because I mentioned this in a TikTok. I couldn't take the sacrament for years. I felt like shit, and like I don't think that's uncommon, but it's not comparable to a gay experience, but that is the part of the
But it's
story
still
that I
part
was
of the
like,
scarlet letter that you are told to wear. And then to have somebody else be able to be married and not wear any scarlet letters but have a golden star, that is freaking triggering for a lot of us.
I think though that was the right thing to do, because just because I may not understand a certain experience, if I can understand it, that opens the door for me to have compassion. And so I think that's exactly what you should be doing.
I agree.
Yeah. If I can jump in a little bit, and similar to what we've been talking about, but a little to the side of like what some people have been saying, is like one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about talking about things like this, is because like the church taught us all to think in all or nothing ways. We are a saint or we are a sinner. It is heaven, it is hell, it is good, it is bad, and like so much of life is in the middle. And so, there were a couple of comments like a while ago now, so sorry to bring this up now, but, some people are like, I don't even think we should blame Mormon stories. We need to be thinking critically about people, even in our own community. That is a huge mark of like healthy deconstruction. And if you are in that all or nothing mindset of like, well, let's just not worry about Mormon stories, like it does a lot of good. Yes, it does do a lot of good. And John Dehlin himself also is problematic in a lot of ways. I could go off, but like, and so it's like that. It's not that I have a personal vendetta against John Dehlin. It's that I want people to gather these critical thinking skills that the church did not teach us. We literally were given smooth brains when it comes to critical thinking skills from the church. Okay? Smooth, not wrinkly. So we need to wrinkle those brains and think critically about these things. And so, that's why I get so heated when people just come to John's defense. It's like, no, we don't have to hate him, but we also can hold him accountable, recognize when he is being problematic, recognize that maybe he could take a back seat and for once let someone else do a freaking interview. I know he's done that occasionally, but like it's not his style. So, some people are like, I don't even think Mormon stories should be part of this. It's like they have to be though. They're like the head of the freaking Exmo community when it comes to podcasts. Thrive holds a shit ton of events, which is great. And also, it is not above criticism, and we need to be thinking about that more critically. And so that's where my passion lies, and being able to hold space for both. That's why I say in my videos about John Dehlin, like, I know he does good. I'm not saying he doesn't. One does not negate the other. So we need to talk about both and hold space for both. And it might be uncomfortable, of course, like I really admire that you're saying that, Sam. Like you've had some uncomfortable questions. That's good. That's huge growth. And I feel the same way about like some of the things that have been said tonight. I'm like, damn, didn't think about that. That's more critical thinking for me to go through, but that's why I'm so passionate. And so, regardless of what the topic is, especially when it comes to the queer community though, because I am queer myself, of course I'm going to be more heated, but it's like, I have that passion of like, we need to fully deconstruct. We cannot just stop at certain levels or certain layers. Like it sucks. I know, trust me, it's not fun, but in order to like really be healthy and be able to have more compassion for people, we have to keep going down that deconstruction path.
Can I add on a little to what you said?
Yeah.
I think that a lot of times when people leave the church, if we're not taking the time to do that work and add some of those wrinkles, the patterns of worship within the church just get copied and pasted outside. and he has a lot of like a rabid fan base, not everyone, that will defend anything egregious he said online or not, won't even hold a second to see how things play out, or like from harassment cases to anything he says online that's like racist or like whatever. He just blocks, 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 and he's always done it and he always will, unless he changes, which he could. So there's no criticism there, and it just kind of carries that whole follow the prophet mentality and just posts it outside and just takes like the temple questions and changes them into some weird Exmo like all or nothing. And life isn't that way. And for me, something scary leaving, high demand religion is how can I make sure I'm never in anything like this again? And so I just kind of need to, like you're saying, have those critical thinking skills, whether they come to any aspect of my life, and make the best decision that I can and grow. Like, growing is good. Changing your mind, like, is good. When people are like, don't change, I'm like, oh, hell no. Like, heck no. I hope I am a better and different person and don't want to be holding the same beliefs I did in high school. Like, how crappy is that? But yeah, I see a lot of people just kind of do what you're saying, just hold him to some unattainable standard and defend him without even listening to like what's happening.
Right, right. Well,
I
and
gotta say,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, well, I was just gonna say that I really appreciated, Mackenzie, how you started your YouTube video, because I loved when you said there is no playbook for ex-Mormon, how to do it. Well, technically, one of us actually did write a book on a playbook, but it's not like the official. She's a really good person, and I love that she wrote a playbook. But still, like, there's never going to be an official playbook on how to ex-Mormon, right? And you're like, I loved that you get to question everything, and I thought that was so well said. And I think one of the other things that I really appreciated, that I even was nervous about, just the fact knowing that I was going to be the person in the room with male privilege, and that bothered me. And I know that we all need to like always be consistently aware of the privilege that we hold, and it's never going to be held right. Like, I know that I've talked over women when I've tried to boosted them up, and I've spoken for them when I should try to hold them up. What does that even look like? I don't know. We're all learning how to be better allies. But I just wanted to thank you for that, because I do think that that's an important point that is coming up here, in that the patriarchy is going to be upheld. So when John Dehlin says something, or even when Gerardo says something, just by nature of them being men, there's going to be people who will come to their defense unknowingly because of their patriarchal bias. And I think that was a good point that you brought up.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Agreed. No notes. um My brain is mush. It is insane how tired I am that I cannot process a single thought other than I agree with what you just said. And thank you so much for just even watching my video. Honestly, leaving the church has taught me more about hearing out other perspectives than ever in my entire life. When I was Mormon, oh my God, the way I could not listen to other people and just did not give a shit what anyone else thought. Oh my gosh, so toxic. I was so judgmental and I didn't know anything. I literally never listened. I never looked into anyone else's perspectives but my own. So I love hearing other points of view. I really do. I just love the world in which I'm not told not to read certain books or listen to certain people. Oh my God. Like, I love that, like, I can watch John Delin's podcast even if maybe I have an issue with stuff he's done in the past, and I can like be friends with people that I disagree with, and like it's just the way you go about disagreeing too. Like Sam, like from day one when you came out with your first video being like, yeah, here's my stance on it, and we didn't agree, I wasn't like, oh my God, like I'm done with Sam. because you were so, it's your tone, it's the way you went about it, and then but the tone some people take, some people meaning mostly John Dylan and Gerardo, but because I'm like, there's really no other people I have a problem with right now. Not that I don't have I don't know, but then it doesn't. I really,
I think I get what you mean.
I don't care. I'm not like I don't. I care and I don't care. Like I'm not like throwing darts at a picture of their faces, but it's literally just like it's been really interesting. Anyway, sorry, I just rambled so much, but basically, yes, the fact that we can disagree, there's no disciplinary council, and there's no handbook. I love it. I just fucking love it. So freaking love it. Whatever. Yeah.
I will say
That
I'm
was our
similar,
third
but
one, and we're still okay.
to an extent. It's kind of like that, like, fine to disagree with people unless, like, they start advocating for harm for a community, which is kind of where I am with Charlie. So then I know that line can be very
So
different for different people, but it's just kind of like, and I know this is not what you meant, Mackenzie. I'm just kind of throwing it out there. Like I've had people like interpersonally be really nice to me being trans or queer or whatever, but then they're like dating Trump supporters or whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. And it's like, isn't it so great that I can just be friends with everyone? And it's like, if there's a point where like your values are okay with like dehumanizing me, then I don't know how much we're like friends. And again, taking the separate sidestep conversation to what you were saying, because I don't think that's what you meant or what you're saying. I just think like in general, like yeah, I've definitely in this conversation I've learned and changed my mind because of everybody's voice. And I think that's growth and I appreciate, the different voices. But it's just throwing out in general and similar, like don't have to agree on everything unless it gets into that sort of thing. And then it's like, no.
No, what I meant by like being friends with people who disagree with, I didn't mean like supporting people who are hateful and terrible.
Yeah,
I
I
meant
just wanted
like,
for comments and stuff like that just because it's commonly thrown out that way. And it's, yeah.
like
Just why I said I don't think that's what you meant yourself. Just
and
clearing up.
no.
yeah, people are talking about black and white thinking, but which is dangerous, but also it's like there are some things that I just think are wrong. Like you can still have a moral compass after leaving religion, and you can still be like, no, for sure this is wrong and this is right, and this person I don't want to associate with, and this person I do. It's just not up to an organization anymore. I guess is more what I meant. I've been thinking about that though, like black and white thinking, and I'm like, but there are some things that are black and white almost, which is, but it's I don't know. It's like a contradictory statement because it's like yes, there's nuance and everything, but there are also just some things that are flat out like there's no nuance to it. I don't know. I don't know what
Right.
I'm talking about.
I can think that there are things that have very little nuance. But I do want to say, because it was brought up, I want to thank you, Mackenzie, for elevating the conversation because of the amount of work that you did just to like bring receipts forced me to say, if I want to keep talking about this, girl, I need to step up. So it forced me to ask a lot more questions, to do a lot more research. And there was a part that really just kind of broke me today when I was reading a review of Charlie Bird's book. And that's what really forced me to have compassion for gay Mormons who are in a horrible homophobic church that they should completely leave, but it's a valid choice if it makes them happy. But in his book, he said he was talking about the prophets' homophobic behavior and the things that they've said, and he said that he was reading. He said something along the lines of, if Jesus can forgive the people who nailed him on the cross, maybe I can forgive the people who put nails in my soul. And that hurt.
Yeah.
But then also I could see myself being that person and wanting to have grace for the people who hurt me. and it reminded me of who I used to be as a Mormon, and it extended me some grace for his humanity and the precariousness of his situation. So, as much as I still vehemently do not like him and his behavior, this conversation has helped me humanize him. I'm just really excited for him to finally leave that church so that I can actually have full unblown compassion for him rather than like a lot of reservation and anger and bitterness and rage. So,
What percent chance is it that he will eventually leave, in your opinion?
Next 10 years.
well, here's the other thing. I feel like, see, this is the other big issue that it's hard to ask myself, because I asked myself the miracle question. I don't know, Ashley, if you use the miracle question from solution based, but I asked myself the miracle question of what would the Mormon church look like if it wasn't homophobic? And I realized, crap, it looks like kind of like Charlie Bird's life. And I realized he's a step. He's a necessary step that's doing a lot of harm, but is absolutely necessary for the church to get where it needs to go. And I think that's why I'm kind of having to lean into like that brings up so many questions. What does my healing look like? If the church is going to be there, then where am I going to go with all of my anger if they change their behavior? Because they're not going to apologize. Just like they haven't
no, they
apologized
never
for the
have, and
racism.
they say they never
Just
will.
like they haven't apologized for subjugating women. They're never going to apologize, but they will change. So then what do I do with that? How do I feel?
I think because it's an organization and a business, and they're already bleeding so much, and they blame, the new generation being so open about the gays or like whatever, that when push comes to shove, whether it's because of protections or whatever, that there's a small possibility once Oak dies that it might become like Charlie's, and maybe it's like, hey, you get the Telestial Kingdom, or we don't know, or something. But I don't really think that it's going to change anything really doctrinally. It just won't be openly as homophobic, because that's what they're doing. They're appearing more mainstream Christian because they don't want to bleed now that people can look them up. They're trying to blend in. And it's similar to like the GOP. Like you can have your George Santos's, like that would have seemed unthinkable 20 years ago, 15 years ago, to have someone be so openly gay and voted for as a like Republican. And it kind of goes back to that tokenizing conversation. Like, I think to an extent it will be like, you can't have power, but we want to be able to see, gotcha, you can't call us homophobic anymore. I mean, the church is still racist,
Yeah.
but, they're like, oh, look what we did here, blah, blah, blah. Just more as like a PR line of defense, but without actually acknowledging changes, making real structural changes. It might just be like follow. Like, I really think that like in 20 years, they're going to be forced to be like, well, the law of chastity applies the same to everyone. And then have some sort of something about like adopt or, IV, or I have no idea. Or you just have a
The
lesser degree of
revelation
glory
that
and
we've been
people are
waiting
like, great.
for.
But they're going to have to do something, and I think within like a generation, just to survive as an organization, and it's going to be something. I don't think it's going to be temple marriages. I don't think it's going to be like foundational change of doctrine. I just think they're going to like be, as they've been rewriting history, they keep rewriting all their history and their policies and their websites and taking things down. And, now they're saying, and even missionaries now grew up believing that the church was never racist and the church never had anything against blacks, because in all of the church stuff, it says we were pioneers in like in the civil rights era, the church gave so much money, and it's like, no, they kept saying they're literally communist and that people of color and black people were literally too dumb to come up with an organization. So it was literally Satan. Like Oakes wrote a letter to the first presidency and like Ezra Taft Benson and all of that. So just kind of how they've rewritten history there and to try and make new generation just be like, oh yeah, we've always been good. They're going to try and do something similar to be like, hey, look, Charlie was married and he was this and that. We've always done this in the past. Not that I think it's ever
And I
going to be a
think with
safe space
this,
for queer people. I just think they're going to try and save their assets.
I think what this conversation is having me lean into though is that for my own healing, I need to envision a church that is no longer homophobic so that I can decide now what do I do? Because I keep hitting a wall of you can't heal while the harm is still happening. You can't heal in the place where you're harmed. So what do I do when racism still exists, homophobia still exists, and I'm still running into Mormons all of the time? And I think I need to ask myself the question, now let's pretend that they weren't homophobic anymore. Then what would my healing look like? Because I think I deserve that healing now. Because whether they change in a year or in 100 years, I deserve that healing now. So that's really what's coming up for me from this conversation.
I like that point of view.
Can I?
Oh, girl, Renee, I am never going back. Girl, ooh, no, no, no. It's still
Jump
racist.
scare. Jump scare.
I think
Ashley.
it means more like healing himself than like going back to it. Even though most queer people
Yeah.
at one
It's the
point or another
resentment,
ever
you
were
know.
like, what would it take for you to go back to the or to stay or whatever? And it's like hopes and dreams when you're in that like, I'm gonna make the change from the inside stage. Which is kind of where I think Charlie is right now. That like if we all leave, who's gonna make change inside or at a local level?
Ashley, you had something you wanted to add?
Yeah. I'm gonna just say one more piece and then I'm still at work, so I gotta go because I want to get the hell out of here. Okay, I just wanted to address one other thing that's not really what we're talking about right now, but what we have been talking about with some things people said about like we don't want to focus on John Dehlin with this issue. I do agree, and I think speaking back to what you said, Sam, like the beauty of this is though is like we all have our different lanes. So for me, being a therapist that works with a lot of ex-Mormons, I know one of the biggest struggles ex-Mormons have is thinking in these all or nothing ways. And I also know that there's patriarchy, and I also know that we still uphold ex-Mormon men, especially ex-Mormon white men, and sometimes act like they're above criticism, and that's just not true. So that is my lane and my passion. So that's why on my page, I'm going to be talking more about that when these things come up. However, for you, Sam, you are like conversion therapy 101, like amazing knowledge and a wealth of resources. So I'm not going to really speak to that because even though I know a little bit and I know how harmful it is, that's not my lane and that's not going to be my focus. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this ex-Mormon community is we have all of these people, even just the people in this live, that have all these like niche knowledges, and we don't have to listen to just one person. So like I can focus on a little bit of why I'm pissed off at John Dehlin in this scenario because he does have some blame, but then you, Sam, can focus more on some of the stuff with Charlie, and Mackenzie can focus on all of it. And it's like, but like we just have like we don't have to have just one voice. And so I would never want someone to think that I'm trying to say, no, we have to focus on John Dehlin and only John Dehlin. That's not what I'm saying. That's just where my passion lies and where I want to help people unlearn some of these church things. And then, we have experts on everything. And that's what's so
That's
freaking
your
great.
calling.
Yeah, exactly. So we can all be different and we all have a wealth of knowledge in different things, and like that's what's so good. Not one of us has to be right or can be right. It's literally not possible.
Well, if it's my calling, then I think I need Ashley to set me apart because, women can use the
Yeah.
priesthood too, right?
Yeah. That's the lesson of this whole life, right? We are supposed to copy paste the church into an Exmo community and sustain John Dolan as prophet. Yeah. Just kidding.
Well, I can sustain Mackenzie.
Now that I would do as well. I would sustain Mackenzie. I can agree with that.
No, I decline. Too much pressure. Too much pressure. I don't want to be in charge of nothing.
Mackenzie is tired. Ashley
Don't put
has
me
to
in
go.
charge of anything.
Lexus, do you have it? Does anyone have anything else, any parting words before we end and thank everyone?
I just want to thank you all for the convo and for all of your differing thoughts about it. And it's interesting to see where the conversation went and kind of what the themes were afterwards. So, and again, thanks so much. I felt like this group was very good to feel like we could share opinions and feel that we're going to be trusted and heard and learn from each other. And I appreciate that.
I agree.
Same. This literally was
Love
so
your
good.
entrails.
What'd you say?
Well, I
Sam,
don't
what
want to
did
say
you
love your guts because everyone says that.
You said
I said I love your
entrails?
entrails.
That's horrible. Oh my gosh.
Those are weird
You're
words.
welcome.
I hate it. Thank you. No, Sam, seriously. Okay, but Alexis, it was so nice to meet you. Sam, I love you. I loved this conversation. I truly did. And I feel a lot better. I feel like I came into this conversation like just so stressed and so kind of angry and confused. And now I'm like, oh, everything's fine.
Same.
Not everything's fine, but just
Yeah.
everything's going to be fine. Because, like, you guys are such good people. And I don't know. You have good hearts. And I just really like you guys a lot.
Same. Ditto.
So,
Okay, bye.
thank you everyone in the comments.
Thank you.
It's been fabulous.
Okay, bye, guys.